Kia ora everyone. Happy Māori Language Week. Ko Raman tuku ingoa, ko William tuku papa, ko Rowena tuku mama. Ko Ngāpuhi tuku iwi. Just a little bit about me. I'm Māori, Kiribati, Scottish and Hawaiian. And just before I hand it over to Chris, we'll open up with an opening prayer. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu. Tia Māori ora. Thank you. I would like to hand it over to Chris.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui, Raman. Thank you so much. What a lovely way to start this evening. And of course, to celebrate Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. Ko Chris Woods, tōku ingoa. And I'm back again for the third session in this future of work engagement that we've got with Manawa High School. And it's really wonderful to be here. And what I want to do is just take a moment or two to set up what we're going to be doing this evening before I'll then pass over to Emma to talk a little bit more about the purpose and introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker this evening is Manawa Udy from Ngahere Communities. And some of you may remember I talked last week about being from the University of Auckland Business School. And one of the things about Manawa and what she and her team are doing, they're neighbours. In that we have a South Auckland campus, our Taitonga campus, which is just 2 or 3 doors away from Ngahere Communities. So I know that they are doing amazing things. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is a conversation, a little bit more of a conversation around social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. But before we do that, just want to connect in with everybody again. Just wondered if you wouldn't mind entering into the comments section what your connection is with Manawa High School, or what your thoughts were from the session that we did last week with Mint Innovation, or maybe you've had some connection with Ngahere Communities. So any of those, and why we want you to do that in the community, in the comments section, is because once Manawa has finished her kōrero, we would really, really love to have questions and comments and to have a little bit more of a Q&A session where we can pick up on some of the themes that Manawa will be talking about. So with that in mind, please enter those comments in now, and I'd like to hand over to Emma to talk a little bit more about the purpose of this evening and introduce our guest speaker. Emma.
Kia ora, and thank you, Chris. We've all heard about how important purpose, values, and leadership are to collectives and individuals. Simon Sinek talks about finding your why. The why is the purpose, cause, or belief that drives every one of us. You might be really lucky and know your why already, or you might still be wanting to work it out. And that's what education can help with. Purpose, values, and leadership have always impacted people and business. But the disruption of the last year and a half has magnified their importance. When we are isolated from people, when we lose opportunities through a lockdown, and when the routines of our lives are turned upside down, we were reminded of what really matters to us. But although it can feel like not much is happening at this time, deep change is underway. An example is offered by the World Economic Forum, whose research has found that young people want to have an impact on the world. And one of the key ways of doing this is to start their own enterprise, which brings us to our guest today. She's the perfect example of a young woman working and leading with purpose and driven by values that relate to her community. She is a powerhouse and is constantly taking things to the next level with her team. She has an energy, enthusiasm, and persistence that is very much needed to be an agent of change through entrepreneurship. She's really trying to capture the essence and spirit of South Auckland. Welcome, Manawa Udy. Manawa is the host of Ngahere Talks podcast and founder of the Manawa is the host of the Ngahere Talks podcast and founder and CEO of Ngahere Inc., a group of social enterprises that exists to invest in the potential of Māori and Polynesian people. Here are some of the enterprises under that umbrella: Ngahere Communities operate Grid Manukau, a co-working and innovation space in South Auckland. Ngahere Foundation delivers the Tukua development program for creators, innovators and entrepreneurs. Kone NZ, an e-commerce platform for Aotearoa brands with a vision to see economic prosperity for all of Aotearoa. Born and raised in Rotorua, now based in Manukau, Manawa dedicates her life to helping other people and growing their potential. Over to you now, Manawa. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Chris. It's such a privilege to be asked to be here tonight. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to talk with you all about purpose, values, and leadership from my perspective. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself and share with you my mihi and my pepeha. For those that you can see the visual, this is an actual photo of my pepeha that I took a few years ago back in Rotorua. So I was born and raised in Rotorua, and this photo was taken from the viewpoint of Pukepoto, the top of Whakapaungako, which is my maunga on the eastern rim of Lake Rotorua. Going down through the pine trees is Ngahere, my awa, toku awa, which you can't trace it all the way to the lake because it ended up getting diverted underground, but ko Ngahere te awa, which flows into Rotorua Nui a Kahumata Momoi, te Moana, the beautiful Lake Rotorua. In the middle, on the right of the image there, you'll see Mokoia, te Motatapua, Teniro, Mokoia, the sacred island of Teniro, which is based in the centre of Lake Rotorua. And then if you swing back around and back along to the shoreline, there's a point called Hinamoa Point, where my marae sits, called Ōwhata, called Ōwhata te marae. And at my marae, I have Hinamoa and Tūtanakai are the tupuna whare based there. And some of you may have heard the beautiful Māori legend of Hinamoa and Tūtanakai, the great lovers, and how Hinamoa swam from that side of the lake across to her lover, who was wooing her from the island in the middle, and the two became one 13 generations before I was born. And so I'm really proud of that ancestry. So tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Thank you for having me tonight. Born and raised in Rotorua, I'm now based here in Manukau, and Emma did a really good job, I guess, in trying to sum up all the things that I do, but I like to sum it up as I'm just a good old hautatu. Born and raised in Rotorua, and I guess I always love the opportunity to do lots of different things and try lots of different things. And I guess to understand what it is that we do at Ngahere and the way that we do things is to understand where I have come from, my own journey of finding my own purpose, my values, and my leadership. And so tonight, what I'm going to do, first of all, is just share a bit of that journey with you, my journey in building Ngahere Inc, and why I care so much about our people. I hope that sounds good. And then I'll talk a little bit more about what we do at the end and then open it up for questions. So growing up, this is my koro, he's my hero, and that's him on a boat. Just behind him is Mokoia Island, so he's over in the middle of the island driving back. This would have been about 1984, 85. And I remember very vividly as a young kid, just before I started school, going with my koro and my dad sometimes and my cousins over to the island and would stay the night, sometimes under a tarpaulin or a bivvy that my koro would build. He was always outside. He was always dragging us along with him. He was always doing something, even though we grew up in an environment where we didn't have a lot financially. There was something about the drive and the motivation that my grandfather held, and his love for our whānau and our people that was super important and really impactful in me and growing up. Oh, see, it still gets me emotional when I think about him, when I talk about him. And he instilled a lot of purpose and values in me. The other photo in here is me. That's me in the middle, like going like this with a handful of my cousins. So I was born as the oldest female in my generation, and then all my aunties and uncles had heaps and heaps of kids. And I became like the default babysitter, what I like to refer to as the tuakana. And I think I was always raised, if you understand tuakana taina or mentoring relationships, or being, there's always someone older and someone younger, and you're growing and doing life alongside each other. I grew up as a tuakana and always having lots of people around me that I could influence and that I could lead, and who looked up to me, and who I could, I guess I learned at a young age what it meant to be someone that could provide strength and stability, but also the opportunity to veer people in mischievous directions as well. There's definitely a mischief growing up in Rotorua, and I think all entrepreneurs are really mischievous. Just saying, if you want to be an entrepreneur, be in mischief. All right. So going on from born and raised in Rotorua, I think, I talked about my whānau, tuakana. Actually, I'll just, one more thing that's really influential for me is that my koro, he was really entrepreneurial, as in he knew how to use what he had to get what he wanted. And as a whānau, we would always be doing things like finding ways to provide for the things that we wanted to do. And like my family loved to cook. My nan was a cook. That's how she won my koro's heart. All my aunties became cooks. I became a bit of a cook as well. And so we always used to do things like catering and doing like food stalls. And they were always working and trying to find ways for our whānau to have the money that we needed to continue on with what we were up to. So that was another big thing for me growing up, and things that were instilled in me when I was a bit younger. After I finished school, I moved to Palmerston North. So I grew up in Rotorua, went to Girls High there, and then I moved to Palmerston North to pursue a career in photography. I had found out that I was really into photography. I was always creative. I was kind of clever, but I never really found my fit at high school. I got into a lot of detentions. I was a little bit of a mischief. And even though I could do the work, I didn't really do the work. I didn't get into university after that. So I signed up to this 3-year advanced diploma doing photographic imaging or photography back before digital cameras were a thing, just as digital cameras were becoming a thing, actually. So I learned on film and stuff like that. So I spent 3 years in Palmerston North and got what's called an advanced diploma. So this is me and a couple of my classmates, half of Daniel's head, at our graduation after 3 years with our advanced diplomas. I learned a lot about photography. I learned a lot about storytelling and design. I learned a lot about how to interact with people. Especially when you're photographing people, there's a lot of psychology that goes with that around how to get really good images and how to communicate visually. As a part of that, I also we had to set some goals about what we wanted and what direction we wanted to go in. And one of my goals was to get this job at this the biggest kind of leading photography lab in Aotearoa, which is based in Auckland and Parnell, the suburb of Parnell. And so before I left UCOL, it was called, where I studied, I did like a mock interview for my dream job at PCL, this lab in Auckland. And it was part of one of our assignments. And anyway, after I finished studying, I moved to Auckland, and I was looking for a job when I was in Auckland because I wanted to pursue my photography career. And I ended up finding my dream job that I applied for at UCOL was actually being advertised at PCL in Parnell, and I was in Auckland. And so I ended up getting what was my dream job in photography school once I moved to Auckland. I got to interact with lots of really high-level photographers and got to start building my career that way. I set another goal for myself where I wanted to have my photos on billboards in Auckland. That was like my biggest goal and biggest dream at that time. And about 2 years into living in Auckland, I achieved my goal with a photo of a cat eating cat food on a billboard by the motorway at Green Lane. And I remember driving past that billboard and thinking, I am so unsatisfied with the direction that my life was going in, because it just wasn't cool to me, right? A cat eating dog eating cat food on a billboard. So that's kind of how things started off for me in getting my skill. Sorry, I've just lost my mouse. Let me try and find you. There we go. So this was me at my job at PCL. I worked with a bunch of girls. This was out the back where we did all the photography, used to scan all the films, do all the color printing, stuff like that. And that's where I got into that. But it was pretty apparent pretty quickly after that. No, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry, team. That wasn't really what I wanted to. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I found that I was lacking purpose. Like I said before, with my goal that I achieved, I was really lacking some really good purpose in my life. And that was I was kind of entering into about my mid-20s by then, and realized that, yeah, there was something more to life. And I think a lot of the things that my grandfather taught me and the things that I grew up with about prioritizing people and doing things together, I think some of that stuff started to come back, and I had gone on this journey where I was just kind of fulfilling my own desires and doing what I wanted, but I wasn't really looking at more about how was I created and how was I raised and what does that look like in my life moving forward. And so I ended up leaving the whole photography thing beside and went on this whole new tangent around, I guess youth development and community development is what it's called, but around how I could use the skills that I had to help other people. And so I ended up working as a youth leader. I ended up working in a youth centre in Mount Roskill. We did a lot of work around community collaboration and how entrepreneurship can help vulnerable communities. The role that entrepreneurship has in helping you build your self-confidence. I learned a lot about social enterprises and how enterprises could not only be financially viable and financially profitable, but they could also make a real impact in people's lives or communities' lives or the environment and things like that. So I guess I kind of went on this whole journey of really trying to understand what it is that I really wanted to do. And it was in that season of my life, my mid-20s, where I really got challenged, actually going into my 30s now, where someone just said to me, what is your life goal? Like, what is it that you actually really want to do? What does success look like to you? And I remember I couldn't answer that question when that person asked me. And I kind of really went inside and was like, I actually don't know what it is that I really want to do. But in that season, I guess I started to look at what's super important to me and what that might look like. And that, I guess, ended up on the journey that I've been on to build Ngahere communities. And it's such a big journey at the moment. It's such a cool team. But I started out, I left, I guess, normal employment and went out on my own as an entrepreneur in 2016. So 5 years ago now, I was just working from home, doing a few things, trying to build my business. And this photo here represents what that has grown into today. This is a few little changes, but this essentially is our current staff. We now have a staff of 14 people. We have 3 different businesses that sit within the Ngahere kind of group, 3 different social enterprises. We run all these different programs, different initiatives, all sorts of creative things. And we're really just looking at focusing on how we can cultivate communities that enhance creativity and innovation. And we use things like collaborative spaces, common values, and co-design programs. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these things real soon, but I'll continue on with the kind of 3 topics we talked about. One being purpose. What is it that really drives you? Because just like Emma said earlier, that Simon Sinek said, is that everything has to start with a why. Like, what is your why? Both personal and like organizational. If you're going to be a business owner, or you're going to be an entrepreneur, or you're even going to work in an organization, what's the why behind that? And like, I'll give you like a bit of an example for me and where I'm at these days, but I firmly believe that our people, our Māori and Pacifica people, are entrepreneurial. We're adventurous, we're innovative, we're creative, we're voyagers, we're navigators. But I'm absolutely sick of the other things that our people are being called. I'm sick of the lies that get told over our people. I'm sick of the statistics that we're overrepresented in things like incarceration and poverty and preventable disease and domestic violence and all these other things. Like I personally just have this hard desire to see our people know the potential that's within them and grow into that potential. And that potential is huge. I now know that is my purpose, my God-given tupuna back purpose, to see people know and grow in their potential. You may not know what your purpose looks like in real life, like in action, like tangibly, but once you tune into your purpose and your why, the activities itself will start to emerge. That purpose around people finding their potential is what drives me as a CEO and essentially forms the basis of everything that we do at Ngahere. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit soon with our values. But these 3 questions that are on the screen right here, essentially 3 questions that can really help you find and understand your purpose and find and understand your organization's purpose. And if you haven't seen that YouTube clip by Simon Sinek around the golden circle, I definitely recommend that you do that. So off the back of that, like knowing what your purpose is then like understanding what your values are. And everything that we do at Ngahere, you know, we're cultivating communities that enhance creativity and innovation. We're bringing out the potential that exists within our people. So values are then the things that come in and actually like, they become your priorities. They help show you which way to go. So at Ngahere, we have a set of values that we ensure that all of our staff understand, and we talk about them all the time in our messaging. Our values go like this: we are pioneers, we are entrepreneurs, we are innovators, we are creators, we are collaborators, and we are nurturers. So we have 6 values at Ngahere communities that we always talk about, our team are aware of, and they're always looking at how they bring those values into the way that we approach the things that we do. Your values essentially paint a picture of where it is that you're going to go. If you live by those values and you create a culture that prioritizes those values, then you will become those values. And then when it comes to a fork in the road where there's like maybe 2 opportunities you could choose from, or you have to make a decision to change something that you're doing, or there's some uncertainty or something crazy like COVID comes along, it's your values that will center you and your values that will guide you as you continue to make decisions moving forward. As long as the decisions that you make, you know, come from your purpose and are driven and bound by your values, then you're always going to be heading in the right direction. And we, like, one of the things that I really love that we're learning about doing is how we create environments for our people to thrive. And that comes from our purpose and that comes from our values. And so when we even look at creating a physical space, like a co-working space, it's all about how are we nurturing? How are we making places where people can be creative? How is this pioneering? Like, how is this something innovative? We're always asking ourselves that. And in our quest to try and find environments to thrive, I think that's where I guess Ngahere is really, I guess, getting some momentum, both physical spaces, but also virtual spaces and communities, places where people can get together. So moving on now to the last point, leadership. Looking forward to getting some questions and stuff from you guys as well. But I've got a couple of quotes that I really love about leadership. My favorite, I guess, teacher on leadership is a guy called John Maxwell. He's an American author and a bit of a guru on leadership. I've read quite a few of his books, but here's one quote that he says that leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. Because leadership happens everywhere. You know, you don't need a title. A title doesn't make you a leader. It's who you are and the influence that you have on people around you. Like, I think back to growing up and having younger cousins that were around me. And I was forced into these positions of leadership just on a day-to-day thing, you know, like sometimes I'd have 5 little cousins and we're swimming in the ocean trying to get mussels. And it was my job to make sure that they all came back safe. I don't know at that stage that was leadership. But it was not that long ago that one of those cousins that came out to get mussels with me told me about an essay that he wrote for a leadership program he was doing in the army. And when he was asked for an example of leadership, he talked about this time that I took him and a few others out to the beach and we went out and we dove for mussels, and he was terrified, but it was my ability to ensure him that he was safe with me that let him know that he was going to be okay and that he could trust me and follow me and everything was going to be sweet. So, and all that to say, I mean, leadership is not about what title do you have, what are the things that you're doing, what are you known for. Leadership is about your ability to influence other people. And so the second quote from John Maxwell I wanted to share is that a leader is not great because of his power, but because of his ability to empower others. I'm going to say that one more time. A leader is not great because of his power, but because of his ability, her ability to empower others. And to be honest with you guys, like, leadership is not about you. Leadership is about those who choose to follow you. And one thing I guess that I've learned about leadership is that if you want to influence people, you have to be willing to go to the places that you want them to go to. You can't push you to be a leader. You got to go first. For me, my purpose around people knowing and growing their potential means that I have to know and grow my potential first in order for me to be an authentic leader and someone that can influence and empower others to go on that journey themselves. So one of the cool things, I guess, that a good example of what that looks like right now, today, in my life, is Cornet, our e-commerce platform that we launched we built last lockdown at the start of last year. This lockdown, we're spending taking Cornet global, and we're starting that by moving into Australia. We're doing things that we've never had to do before, learning how to run businesses and own businesses in other companies, learning different tax laws and compliance, learning about exporting and importing, working with multiple brands here in New Zealand and then multiple contractors over in Australia. But one of the exciting things, despite the fact that I'm doing heaps of things I have no idea that I'm doing, or I'm learning as I'm going, is that my team is 100% behind me. And all of us are kind of on this journey together, where we know that we want what we have to be available to more people. We know that the avenues that Cornet is opening up is empowering to both people here in Aotearoa, and will be empowering to people in Australia as well. And everything that we're doing lines up with our vision and our purpose. And so we're just getting on board with it and getting it done, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, but really believing that after COVID, we'll be pretty stoked with the way that we spent our lockdown. So I'm going to leave it at that because I'm keen to get into some questions. Thank you guys for your time. We'll hand it back to you, Chris and Emma.
Look, Manawa, thank you. Miharo korero. That was an awesome presentation. Thank you so much. I'm a bit of an academic nerd, so I'm busy scribbling like crazy, and really pleased that these are recorded so that I can go back and look through them again. There was so much that was sitting in, both in terms of talking about your whakapapa, talking about your koro, that kind of entrepreneurial legacy, that gift, and that tupuna backed potential. That's kind of my
You like
my
that one,
line.
eh?
Oh, I
Yeah.
really do, because I think that living, breathing potential that sits in all of us from those that have gone before, that we then pass on to the next generation. So thank you. That was awesome. So we've got questions coming in. So please, folks, if you can write those questions in. We've got one question that I think it's from Justine, going, how do we create environments for people to thrive in? So you've got a real passion in terms of prioritizing people.
Yeah.
So how do you, and your team is now up to 18 or 19, how do you create an environment for them to thrive in?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. To be honest, I feel like I'm still learning. But I guess one of the things that, if you kind of take a step back and look at things that are living, whether it's a plant or a fish or a person, like every living thing has the ideal environment it needs in order for it to thrive. Like a fish is not going to survive if you put in the forest, and same with humans. So humans, we have these physiological or physical needs we have in order to thrive. But then I think you can even come even more micro than that and look at different people groups. For example, Indigenous people or Māori people or Pacifica people, even though we are still human, there are things about us that are intrinsically unique. I don't think difference is the right word. There's uniquenesses. And when you have like a culture like Māori, where we're so ingrained in things like whakapapa and things like, all of those values that we're talking about, and people being our priority and all that kind of stuff, like you have to kind of lead from that. You lead from the values and lead from what it is that your why, and then create things on the other side. So a practical way that we do that within our co-working space, for example, is that, like, we've been given a mandate to build a shared office space or shared meeting spaces, and that can be pretty generic. I think everyone knows what an office looks like, or a desk with a chair and a meeting room with a few chairs around it. And I think that's the most simplistic view of what it could look like. We then take it from there and think, okay, if this was me and my whānau, like, my cousins' kids and all of them, you know, because we grew up like brothers and sisters. So my cousins' kids are going to be running through here, and these guys are got kapaka practice, and so they're going to be practicing over there. And you know, you're not allowed to wear shoes inside when you're Māori, and so you know, you probably shouldn't wear your shoes inside. And we don't sit around a boardroom; we sit around a whare, and we sit and we talk and we hui. And so you can make changes, like actual changes within a physical environment quite easily if you choose to come from that perspective as opposed to say a Western perspective. And then I think like with digital spaces, it is about thinking where you're coming from and who it's for and what it is, what are those things within those environments that enable it to happen. Yeah,
thank you. So it's really putting, you know, living and breathing that purpose and those values. Before I hand over to Emma for the next question, I'll just kind of picking up, given that we've got a lot of young people, you know, we're looking with our students at Manawa High School. What is it that you're looking for when you're employing young people? What are the things that kind of are things that spark you when you're looking to employ people?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. Obviously, there's usually some level of like skill set or competency that you want based on what the job is. But outside of that, the things that are really important to me, I mean, I'm values driven all the time. Every relationship that I look at, whether it's a business relationship, a personal relationship, whatever, I always go to values first. Like, does this person value things like whānau, like people, like, you know, people before profits, like language, you know, how we align. And so I look for that similarly in my staff. So is there alignment between who I am or who my businesses are and who you are? I look for like motivation. Like, are you gonna show up? Are you gonna bring your best self, or are you just gonna kind of wander in and be like, I'm here, but I'm not doing anything? Initiative is really awesome. Like, even if you don't know what you're doing, but are you willing to ask questions, and are you willing to learn, and are you willing to bring suggestions to the table? And one of our values, when we put the description down, we literally say you always have to bring a plate to the table and don't be a scab. Like, you have to, you always bring something of yourself. And so I think that stuff's really cool, really important, probably more important than anything else. The rest of it is more like just what skill set do you have to fit what we need to achieve. Yeah.
Awesome. Ka pai. Thank you. Emma.
Thank you for that, Kororo. Manawa, I'm really, really enjoying it. We've got lots of really good questions in here. One of the ones is from Tessa, and it says, many of us recognize our purpose, values, vocation as we get a little older. What advice would you give young people trying to decide their next steps in their education, life, career, when they might not have a clear vision for the future? So, biggie.
Yeah, that's so true. Be patient, young one. I think I don't know. Maybe that's just the law, like gravity. Like, you're not going to learn that until you get a bit older. But I don't know. I think don't be afraid to try things. As you heard in my journey, I went in a wonky ass direction. Like, it was not a straight journey. And I think for me, I've learned along my journey that sometimes I find out what I want by finding out the things that I don't want. So I might end up, at one stage I wanted to be a graphic designer, and I did a work placement with a graphic design company, and I was bored out of my brains, and I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that anymore. So sometimes the process of elimination is super helpful as well. So trying lots of things can actually help you. You don't have to love everything. You don't have to be good at everything, but it helps you along your journey. I think another thing when you're looking at like purpose and values, there's some cool like tips around what makes you angry, what makes you passionate, what makes you cry, like what what really gets under your skin. Not like your siblings annoying and they make you angry, but what's really, like for me, I was saying before, it's our people being incarcerated. It's these lies that are always spoken over our people, saying who we are when it's not who we are. That stuff, sorry, gets me riled up. And so it's a hint to me that that's actually a part of my purpose and a part of my mission.
Yeah, so listen to yourself. Sorry. Yeah, so try lots of things and listen to yourself and find out really what you don't like, and then that'll lead you the path of what you do like.
Yeah,
Chris, do
and
you
be
want to ask
patient.
Ngahere?
It's not a quick fix. Sorry.
Yeah, just flowing on from that, it was, so now what do you say no to? Because I think, one of the challenges with a lot of entrepreneurs and engaging in this kind of opportunity-filled space is it's easy to
Yeah.
say yes in some ways, but what is it that you now, having traveled that journey, what is it that you say no to?
What I say no to now is people that bring real bad energy. I know that sounds a little bit new agey, but
No.
I feel so much more focused now on what I do, that people that come in that try and knock your focus in other directions, whether that's your mental focus, your emotional focus, your physical focus, someone that will pull you into a negative mindset, or someone that will just suck, like they want to talk to you and pick your brains. The amount of times I hear, "Can I pick your brains?" I feel like a carcass. But but that's all they're going to do. They're never going to add you any nourishment back. They're just going to suck off you. So people that are like that, honestly, that's what I say no to these days.
Yeah, because that kind of aligns with what they bring to the table.
Yeah, it does. And I will always try and bring my best to the table, and I'll always give people the benefit of the doubt. But you can, I guess, with experience, you can sniff out pretty quickly the type of energy that people have. And what it is that they want from you. I know that's a little bit of a defensive stance to have, but I feel like, I said, answer. I know where we're going and what we want to do. So if things don't fit within that, then it's a simple no. Other than that, there's something like decision-making processes that I have that are based around, I like to think of time in seasons. Like natural time we have in seasons, but I think in our life journey and even in the growth of my business, there's seasons. And being aware of where your business is at. Like it might be a time where we've got lots of new staff and they need a lot of hand holding and support. If you bring a lot of new stuff in, it's going to make everything frenzy and people won't be able to handle it. So understanding the season and the timing of things helps as well sometimes. Yeah.
Cool. Emma.
Right. I think Raman might have a question. Raman, would you like to? Can we bring Raman back on? She might have a question. Cool.
Do you have any advice on us students in high school moving forward, like in terms of like studying and stuff?
Yeah. So advice for studying or just for your future in general?
It was future in general. It was,
okay. Advice for young people. I think honestly, the day and age that you are living in now, when you were growing up, and things are changing so rapidly. There's so much opportunity for you, and a lot of the things that you know right now and that your parents knew are just not going to be as relevant, I guess, in the very near future. And so I think when there's times of uncertainty and times of big change, it's good for you to pay attention to what's going on, and for you to, like we were talking about leadership, right? And we're talking about having purpose and values, but when you're moving into your future, think about where it is that you want to be, and think about, like with this uncertainty, how do you want to be positioned within that? If you want to be a leader, and I assume a lot of you guys that are here are interested in things like that, then what does leadership look like through these uncertain times? How can you position yourself as a young person to be aware and participate in this change that the world is going through right now, and the people that you're around is going through? Because I feel like for you guys, there's not a lot of certainty ahead. There's a lot of unknowns, and there's not a lot of people that can go, oh yeah, it's going to be like this because that's how it was before. It's so unknown. So it's a really cool opportunity for you to lead and pioneer your way into the unknown. I would say if you're up for an adventure, just get out there and try things. If you're going to study, studying's really cool. Studying, I really loved that season of my life. I feel like it's a cool opportunity. You learn a lot about yourself as well, especially if you move away from home. I think make the most of it, make the most of those years, because once study's over and you really start taking on financial responsibilities more and more, things will change. So yeah, enjoy your youth. Definitely enjoy your youth. Yeah.
Great question, Raman. Manawa, we're just about out of time. It's gone just like that. So the last question, I mean, we've had a real focus on rangatahi in terms of what they're doing. The question I'd like to put to you is, for those of us in education and supporting young people in education, what can we do to kind of encourage more of the haututu, to encourage more of the mischief that we need for this entrepreneurial success going forward? So from an education point of view, what can we do?
Yeah. It's so funny because I was just so naughty at school. So from an education point of view, focus on the naughty ones. They're the ones that'll be more haututu.
But kind of,
but I think no, go.
Well, it's kind of encourage the different thinking, isn't it? To not kind of follow it the straight and narrow, so to speak.
Definitely. I mean, I think opening up, I'm just trying to reflect on some of the ways that I try and do it with my team. Like you want to be able to give people like guidelines, but not the details. I don't know if that makes sense, but you want to point people in the right direction, or give them a bunch of things to play with, or give them a problem to think about, but then just allow the freedom of thought and concepts and ideas to come. I think for my staff, we have a creative team, and a lot of creativity, the stuff that we do anyway, is all digital, and using, kind of techie products. I try and do things like making sure there's even just things like coloring pencils, coloring books, Lego, Play-Doh, all of those things that kind of help awake different parts of your brains, even though they're being creative. I will put different creative challenges on them purely for the sake of getting them outside of their kind of daily grind, where they're just pumping out. They're still pumping out creative work, but it becomes a bit of a grind. So I'll change that up. I'll sometimes a change of scenery. Definitely a change of scenery helps with things like creativity and keeping your mind active. So, teaching in different environments, allowing them to learn and study in different environments really helps. I think I looked at a really cool little study recently that had a few awesome tips around the most ideal creative state. I wish I had it on me right now, but some of the most important things are having really good rest. And so if you're moving into a phase of wanting to do a lot of creative work or work on a problem, maybe you start with a phase of rest and allowing a rested brain to come at a problem. Posing a problem, the next step is incubation, allowing time for that to move over, and allowing, those random thoughts to come in the shower, or for me, driving around, a lot of things, make sense for me. And then the creativity will come after that preparation stage. So I think there's lots of looking a bit more holistically too at the conditions that will create a creative brain, an innovative brain, a mischievous, interested brain.
Yeah. No, that's great.
How does that sound?
That's great. And in the kind of the rule breaking, I know we're almost out of time, but we've got one more question. So I think, Raman, you're going to pose that question. I've got another great question coming in.
Yes. So we have a question from a student. Her name is Bawe, and her question was, how do you manage your time when you're working and worry of other important things?
Yeah, that is tough. That is a really tough thing when you've got a lot on your plate. And I'm always struggling with it. One of the things I said earlier, which was seasons, understanding the seasons that you're in is important, I think, for real balance. And it wasn't all about balance, but there's just some seasons, or even if you can imagine climbing a mountain. So having a successful business is like climbing Mount Everest, for example. that climb isn't actually going to be easy, and there's going to be times where you have to exert more pressure than others or more effort than others. I feel like it's the same in life sometimes. There's just some seasons that call for more energy and more effort than other seasons. So understanding where you're in, where your business or aspiration is. Exam time, studying for exams takes more effort than just showing up to school during the year. Stuff like that, know the season that you're in. But then I try my best to have as good a time management as I can. As a creative, I quite rebel against routine and discipline, but I've learned that that's my friend. So I time manage a lot. I am actually led by my calendar more than anything. And what I do is, personally, I compartmentalize things. So I'll know what's coming up over the next week, 2 weeks, and month, and I will calendar a lot of that stuff out, schedule that stuff out. And when I know that everything that I need to do is scheduled, I will relax and take one thing at a time, and be present in the thing that I'm present at, knowing that if I follow the schedule that I've set out, I'll achieve everything I need to achieve in the time that it needs to be achieved by. So planning, scheduling, knowing the seasons, and I guess learning to not sweat the small stuff. You're going to fail multiple times. Things are going to go wrong, but it's going to be awesome. You're going to be okay. You're going to get back up on top. And that will continue to happen, the highs and the lows. And I learned to just try and keep yourself emotionally and mentally nice and stable in the middle. Don't get too swayed by either thing. Yeah, hope that helps.
Manawa, thank you so much. There, as I said before, there's so much that sits in that presentation and in the Q&A that we've just had. So, ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much, and really wish you and your team all the best going forward. And for those of you watching, don't forget we've got another session next week where we've got a wear group. So that'll be the last of this suite of sessions on a Wednesday evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we sign off, just would like to hand back to Raman for a closing karakia.
Thank you, Manawa.
Thank you. Thank you, Manawa, for sharing your beautiful story with us and answering our questions. And thank you to those who joined as well. Just before, we're gonna just end off with a closing karakia. Unihia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātea, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana. Te wairoa I te ara takata, koira I rongo whakairia ki runga, kia tina, tina, hui e, tai kie. Thank you.